Well, Monica, thank you so much for setting your time aside with this. When as I heard your podcast, Stumbling Forward, and, your book that you've coming out, The Power of Pivoting, that's out available now on Amazon, I was just so excited to connect with you. So first and foremost, thank you for the message that you're putting out in the world. I can't wait to explore that, talk about that more in depth here. I know you're making a really big difference in people's lives with your message. So first and foremost, I just want to recognize you for sharing your true, authentic self. That's such a courageous thing to do, and I can't wait to talk about this message with our audience today. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet.
I think one of the things I've noticed about you is I've watched your videos, I've listened to some of your podcasts, and really this messaging is it seems to be really grounded to some internal things that you've discovered about yourself in this journey we call life. Some core values or core principles that you live your life by. Obviously, adventure is one of them, all right? Yeah. But beyond the obvious, beyond that service of adventure, what is it that you've grounded to that's allowed you to share this message and make this impact in such a meaningful way?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, probably the two biggest things are faith and trusting that I'm not in control of everything and that's okay, and tenacity. I mean, the amount of times doing all these different things that I've done or trying to get this message out there that I felt like it just wasn't going to happen. I know in my heart that it's important. And so I don't care how long it takes. I'm in this for the long haul. So that's probably gotten me this far.
So tell me about that. So I think one of the hardest things for somebody who's as driven as you are is faith, patience, those things. Like relinquishing control, surrendering, I think is a very powerful, process. Like what allowed you to, was there a moment you realized the power of, let's use the word surrendering if we can, or we can use a different word if one resonates with you better. But when was the first time you recognized how impactful that is?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's been little moments in my life that I realized, okay, I don't have control over any of this. But the biggest pivotal moment in my life was my divorce because it was unexpected. I mean, I was miserable in the marriage, but I didn't see it ending. And then when he told me he'd been cheating the whole time, the rug got pulled out. But then there was this relief also at the same time of sadness. But it was mainly that up until that point, I was checking boxes. I was living my life very linear. I was trying to play it safe, high school, college, marriage. And at that moment, when the rug was pulled out, I thought, okay, well, the plan blew up. So what do I actually want? Who do I want to be? Where do I want to go from here? It was like this blank slate. And so one of my goals is to encourage people to ask those questions before their life blows up. But ever since that moment, I'm like, I get to choose what I want out of life. I may not have control over everything, and that's where the faith comes in, but I can choose which direction I go in. And if I don't like something, I can change it. And it's made life way more fun instead of feeling like every choice I make is for the rest of my life. And this is it. It's like, no, let's just see what's going on.
I love that. I think that most of us put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We treat purchasing a pair of jeans as though it is marriage, right? For example, right? Is a great one. Like, do I look fantastic in these jeans? And, at 42, like darkness and distance is what helps me look better, right? But my point in that is that I think so often we get so paralyzed, even in the small decisions in life, that it doesn't give space and room for the big ones. Like, as you've embraced this faith, this tenacity, and this surrendering, like, has there been any particular experiences or opportunities that you've been able to capture that you think of the old Monica in the way you would have made decisions or looked at opportunities or experiences? Like, what has that allowed you to step forward into that maybe the way you were living before would not allow you to do so?
Yeah, it's crazy because I think about it, and I still am sort of this way, but I mean, I really used to have to ask every friend's opinion, family member's opinion before I made any decisions. And I feel like the older I get helps too, because you care a lot less. But I mean, even this last year, so I met my boyfriend in the pandemic, and it was like 2 months later, we were like, let's move. We're done with LA. I was like, yeah, pick a place in mountains. Let's go. And like, I would have overanalyzed that so much before. And now I'm like, this feels good. This feels right in my gut. And, I'm a faith person. I'm like, I don't get that gut feeling saying this is wrong. So let's just see what happens. And it's been a really, really fun way to live. I think there's something about 2020 and having everything taken away that sort of brought me back to that place that I was after the divorce, and reminded me that, like, look, life's short. Let's just try some different stuff. It's one of the reasons I love the word pivoting, because I feel like change is really scary, right? But pivoting is kind of like this, oh, let's just see what's this way. Like owning the failures, failing forward, right? And just kind of seeing where things take you. And it's made it so much more fun. I'm more present every day in my life. If it doesn't work out, I don't dwell on it as much. I'm more just like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's see what's next.
Yeah, I use the words curiosity a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I find myself I give with being curious, I always think connections to children, and I've got 3 young ones myself, and I've never seen, they're young enough. They might someday, but they're much more comfortable trying that thing that there's less rules associated with the way they live, and they have this general approach to life that's just very curious.
Isn't it interesting how we're basically born fearless, curious, happy, all these things. And then slowly over time, those get taken away and worn down. And then we're just really just trying to get back to the place that we started our whole lives, because kids got it right.
Kids absolutely have it right, 100%. And Lauren and I try very hard to be very aware of the structures we put around our kids. We try and allow them to live more organically and recognize courage and tenacity over results and outcomes, and is where we reward. And but that's not most of us, right? That's not like my parents were, and it sounds like you probably had the same experience, that we're very protection oriented, and I've got to protect this little tiny thing. And my kids will take falls, and I'm like, oh, somebody call the doctor. And then they get up and they go, and you're like, okay, if I fell like that, if I took that fall, I'd be in bed for 3 weeks,
Right.
So yeah, I think so. I think there's so much we can learn in the words we choose. And I think there's an interesting one you chose to select, which was, you said you remind yourself. Where did you, you've said that a couple times now, where did you discover that you already knew what you need to know to live life to its fullest?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I don't even know that I know those things until that moment happens. And then it's like, look, I can either obsess over these things or stress or have anxiety, or I can just kind of let it go. And, a big part of that for me was my faith journey and just going, okay, I don't have control over everything. I think after the divorce, when I realized, look, I can't plan everything. I can't avoid heartache or things that may happen or changes. So I have to just trust that it's going to be okay no matter what. And one thing I tell people too is, especially if you suffer from anxiety or beating yourself up a lot or all of those things, I literally have written a letter to myself being like, you're amazing. You've overcome this, so that when those moments of doubt come, I have proof to go back and be like, no, I have done these things before. So I think that kind of reminds me and reframes things to be like, look, you've come through everything you've been through, or you wouldn't be here. So of course you're going to get through whatever's next.
Oh, I love that. So tell me more about the letter, because that's a really powerful tool. And you don't have to divulge specifically what's in your letter, but maybe the construct, and you can divulge if you want to. But how do you write that letter? And then do you carry that in your purse? Do you have that, is that by your, is that there in the morning where you read it each morning and at night? What's your routine around that letter? Because that's a pretty powerful concept.
It's funny. I'm very, very type A. So I feel like every time something's kind of gone wrong in my life, I need to figure out a structure to get through that the next time. So I've sort of built out these mental health toolkits. So the first time I dealt with depression and the doctor was like, I want to put her on meds, I was like, no, I'm going to figure this out. So I made a calendar of good days, bad days, unbearable days, just checked them off. I started walking every day. I put these things in place. And then the same thing when anxiety happened after my divorce, it's like, okay, go for an angry run. And so I have these things where when something comes up, I'll just pick and choose. All right, I'm going to try to stay in bed all day. Nope, that made me feel worse. I'm going to go for a run. Nope, that didn't really help. I'm going to journal. And you just kind of trial and error until something works. And so it was the same thing with the letter of, I know I can stop kind of that brain spiral before it starts if I have proof. because it's really hard in those moments to be like, I'm a failure, and be like, no, you're not. But I think if you have something written down that's like, no, you're not, because you've done this, because you've done this. You know, I started a show, I ran a marathon. You go through all these things, and it's like, oh, I have accomplished things. And I think even for work stuff, sometimes we can feel like we're so far from our long-term goals. But if you have track of everything you've accomplished, in those moments when you feel like you're not going anywhere, you can look back and see how far you've come. So for me, it's just written in a journal. And if I need it, I can refer to it. If it doesn't apply anywhere, I'll write a new one. You know, I kind of go through that process a lot in life. But yeah, that sort of helps me.
I love that. I love that.
I'm so sorry. My computer's about to die. Do you mind if I pause and plug it in?
Go. And we now take this break as Monica plugs in her computer. It's the Monica plugging in her computer show. You're welcome, Kara. The computer cord has left the building. It's a mysterious and dark and scary night. So the most wonderful thing, So the most wonderful thing I get to do. So hopefully this isn't super loud in your ears. Can you hear the crickets?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got a whole soundboard. So while you're gone, I played with the soundboard and left a whole bunch of stuff for Kara to hear. So when she starts editing this,
oh, that's hilarious. That's so
she can hear me through my wall, but it won't be as good. I always
charge it, but I've been in a conference all morning doing the same thing, and I'm so sorry.
We need to get a power strip. So my table is raises and lowers, and so you have to play with like what's the good angle and all this kind of stuff. And so anyways, so I've got mine, if it's not plugged in, the batteries, it's like, you know, your battery's life is no longer good. And I'm like, I'm not buying a new $1,000 computer just because I'll just keep it plugged in. It's good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So anyways, we were talking about your letter, I do believe is where we were. So anyways, so one of the things you just shared, and I think it was interesting in this letter, is this idea of tools and resources and things you can grab when there's moments. You said an angry run. Like I don't know if you meant to say that out loud, if that was one of those things. So, and I'm a runner, so I don't know if I've ever done an angry run. That sounds interesting.
Oh, it's
What's an angry run? This sounds fun. Also sounds like something my neighbors may move if I did. But what is this? What's an angry run? What's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's more than music. So nobody really knows that it's an angry run, right? So like if I'm just in an anxious place where like I can't get out of my brain spiraling, or, you know, if you've had a fight with somebody and you're just in a bad place, it's literally just, I will blast like the angriest heavy metal music and run faster than I normally do. I'll sprint until I'm exhausted and then, you know, jog a little or something. But yeah, it's just getting it all out physically helps me kind of deal with the brain.
I love that. An angry run. I think what's interesting is we come into life and we're given all these tools, right? Whether that's how to do math, how to write, how to do proper syntax and how to navigate email and work and like all this, right? But we're not given these tools on how to manage our emotions at all. Like there's no education in it in schools at all, or if there is, it's very cursory. My kids' schools do meditation and mindful minutes. It's kind of
what?
I know, it's nuts. I was like, this is awesome, but that's a real rarity, and they go to a faith-based school, which is why they can get away with it, right? In a public setting, not so much, right? Yeah. So I love these tools. So thanks for sharing. I'm going to add angry runs, and I got to go deeper in this letter for a second. So you mentioned accomplishments. Do you write in there as well, like the things you've overcome? Like you dealt with this and now we're here. Like is it just victories, or do you recognize some of those, your pivotal moments and your pivots in that letter as well?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of, the changes that I've gone through. Sometimes it's just journaling it out. I was in a relationship after my divorce, and when that was getting tough, I thought, you can survive this. It's not the end of the world. You've been through this and you've been through worse. So whatever happens in this situation, you're going to be fine. So it's really just kind of talking myself up in that way. So it varies. Sometimes it's a list of accomplishments that it's like, okay, I'm not a failure because I've done check, 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 check. Other times it's just like stream of consciousness being like, you've gone through this, you've got this no matter what. So it's really whatever I need in that moment. And then I didn't really write it planning on referring back to it. I just had time and time again and been like, oh yeah, this is true. And I think it's nice to have that proof. I do the same thing with a friend. So, if I feel some anxiety kicking in or my brain starts telling me, you're a bad friend or something like that, I will call her and say, okay, this is what my brain's saying. Is it true? Give me proof. And she'll be like, no, because you threw a surprise party, you got flour, you call me, whatever it is. And they can disprove that lie in a split second. And it prevents so much heartache and spiraling into like, I'm a bad friend, I'm a bad person, nobody likes me. And it can just get worse and worse. So if you can stop it at the beginning before it starts, it's so much better.
Those are 3 powerful tools: an angry run, the letter, right? And what we're going to go, Regis Philbert, we're going to phone a friend, right? Yeah. It's powerful stuff, right? I mean, those are really powerful tools. I use mantras and deep breathing. So I had a moment yesterday where I don't know why. I mean, it was kind of almost the whole day. But I was okay with that. I'm like, okay, it's just going to be one of those days and let it be the day. Right. But where I found myself getting anxious and overwhelmed and so I do 10 really deep cleansing breaths. And then I have some mantras, which is just a really simple phrase that I'll repeat as a tool to myself while I'm doing those deep breaths, to chill out, to calm myself, to remind myself that, that I'm not looking at this thing in a logical manner, that this is my mind playing tricks on me, and that just let the moment pass and it'll go, right? So I love these tools because I think the more we can hand these out to people, they put them in their tool belt. When we have those moments, then we can live our authentic self. We can do more and make more impact when we can get our mind out of our way, which it's just, goodness sakes alive, does it play tricks on all of us, regardless of gender. But
yeah. And I think so, the worst thing we can do, and so many of us do it, is we beat ourselves up for not just being happy, not just being able to get out of it, right? You're like, I'm in this bad place, I'm just going to force myself to be happy. So that's where I like to have these tools. And if none of them work and I just need a day like you needed that day, it's like, okay, tomorrow we're going to try the tools again, know? Yeah. But being kind to yourself in that process. I mean, literally science knows nothing about our brains. It's like 10%. So why are we trying to like beat ourselves up for not being a certain way? Just let yourself feel what you feel and then have tools in place to try to get out of it.
Yeah. I talk to a lot of people that growth is a process of being gentle with oneself. That if you say to yourself, I shouldn't feel this way, your opportunity to pivot from that position has now been reduced to almost zero. It just, like, your feelings are authentically there for whatever reason, and they can be because of, formed neural processes through your journey in life. They can be because of conditions and conditional environments you're in at the moment. They could be tied to specific elements of yourself individually, your identity, gender, sexual orientation, all these things that are unfolding, at that moment. And we don't necessarily know what can trigger that emotion. Yeah. And if the first thing we start with is self-criticism, now we've got the emotion, plus like now you feel worse, right? This isn't moving anything. And so, I love that idea and couldn't align more with the idea of being gentle, just being soft with yourself and being, I feel this feeling and it's okay. Let's try these tools, but it's also okay just to have a day where we're blue, right?
Absolutely.
I love that. So thanks for sharing that wisdom with us. That's really powerful stuff. So tell me this, like, you have this really cool show, Monica Goes, and your fingers are in everything. It's really kind of incredible, right? Obviously you said earlier, like, I'm a type A. I'm like, yeah, you got enough projects going on. That's pretty obvious. Like, I think it shows. You were, there's not enough, there's no way you're masking that. But tell me, like, who inspired this spirit of adventure that's in part of you? Was that something you grew up with? Where did that come from? And how has that impacted you as you've gone on all these amazing trips and done all this amazing adventurous things? Because that's not really what I've done personally.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's kind of come in different moments. So I'm from Michigan originally, and so we grew up on the lake, we grew up camping and things like that. But it's not like I grew up traveling and going, to other countries or anything like that. We were the family of road trips, right? If you're from the Midwest, if it's less than 40 hours, we're driving. So I did a little bit of that growing up. And then in college, my boyfriend at the time was British. So I would go visit him and we would kind of, go around Europe and stuff like that. So that was a little bit, but then I didn't really travel for 10 years. And I was in LA in the entertainment industry, and I was trying to become a host. And I had a teacher tell me to create my dream show as a way to get auditions. And I loved Samantha Brown and travel shows. So I started hiking and filming it on my iPhone. And my ex-husband didn't like hiking. He didn't like travel. And so I thought, if I'm not going to get this out of my relationship, I need to find a way to get it out of my career. And so the combination of trying to become a host and also this like mental thing that I needed, I started filming it, not thinking much of it. One of the biggest mistakes, I didn't really treat it as a business. I was just out doing it and having fun and spending way too much money. But I quickly realized that I'm afraid of everything. And so I thought, well, all I saw on TV was people wingsuiting off cliffs and, size 2 girls hanging off a rock climb. And I was like, this is not me. Like, what about the people like me that maybe want to hike, but are afraid of heights, or try traveling, but haven't left their hometown? I thought there's got to be somewhere in the middle for that. So that became a big premise of the show, was showing people like, look, if I can do it, anybody can. So a lot of it's just crying off cliffs and stuff, but it's been fun.
Yeah, I hear you. It's like I'm 5'6", and I think God made me 5'6" because he knew anything higher than that, I'd have been afraid of it. Like, I'm not a big fan of heights.
Yeah.
It's what have you heard from people? Like, I think one of the greatest gifts we can give this world is showing people what is possible and helping them see something inside themselves by seeing somebody who is relatable. And when they can relate to you, they can say, well, hey, Monica's feeling this way, that vulnerability. Monica's feeling this way. I feel that way. She seems to be having fun. Like, when you've heard from people who've seen that and accomplished things that maybe they wouldn't have without that, like, maybe share a story with that. Have you had those experiences where viewers have said, hey, I went out and did this hike, or I did this adventure that I normally wouldn't have, but I saw you being truthful, honest, and vulnerable. Like, what's that process and experience been like for you?
Yeah, so one of my very first episodes, probably one of the most terrifying, I did Angel's Landing hike in Utah, which, if anybody knows this, at Zion National Park, it's this little strip that drops off 1,000 feet on both sides. And it's this like super epic hike. And I didn't want to do it. I debated, and it's like, what, if I'm going to have a show where I face my fears, I got to do it. And so I did it. I've been back a few times, haven't done it again. I'm like, once was good. I'm good. But I had a family reach out and say that they saw the episode. They weren't sure if they'd be able to do it, if their kids would be able to do it. And then they thought, okay, well, she did it, so we can too. And they actually went and did the trip. And then they ended up flying out to LA because they wanted to meet me.
No kidding.
Yeah, they took me stand-up paddleboarding on Thanksgiving. Like, it was so much fun. So yeah, that was a really, really cool experience for sure.
So the message from that is, 1, watch Monica. You'll do courageous things. And 2, if you do, take her paddleboarding.
Let's go on adventures.
Let's go on adventures. So I'm sweating just thinking about this. So how wide is not very wide? What is like, how many feet? Give us that in, ish.
Oh my gosh, maybe 5 feet wide.
Holy
at some point.
Smokes.
And there's 2-way traffic. So it's...
Oh, no.
That's what scared me more than anything. I thought, okay, well, I'm already afraid of this, but if somebody else falls, I'm screwed. So it's only for a tiny little bit. And it was really funny. There was a senior citizen couple that was going, and I was like, can I come with you? And so I kind of like followed them on their coattails the whole way. Cause I'm like,
no one's going to knock the old people off the cliff, right? You're like, no one's going to knock grandma off the cliff.
I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. So,
oh my goodness. I hear you. Like, no way. No, like, bravo to you. I've got a client of mine that's in Hawaii right now, and she's posting all these photos and all these epic. And one of them was like, there was a rope necessary to finish the last piece of the climb. Yeah. And I'm like, and I'm done here. Like, we're good. Yeah. No, thank you. So that's incredible.
That's been one of the coolest things is, so I realized pretty young that a lot of stuff that I won't do on my own, I will do if there's an audience. It's just how I'm wired. So even in college, I worked at a resort and I was doing stunt shows, and there was a high fall. So we had to jump off a building that was 37 feet. And I told my boss, I said, I can't do this. He goes, when there's an audience of 100 people watching you and the gun goes off, you will jump. And it was true. And so I realized a lot of stuff I've done on the show, I probably wouldn't do if I wasn't filming it and knowing that people are going to watch it. So it's been a really, really cool way for me to push out of my own comfort zones. And my producer's more of a adrenaline junkie than I am, so she pushes me as well.
That's super cool. So do you think that's a transferable piece, is find somebody, not necessarily the show piece, because not everyone's going to do that, but having somebody who's willing to help you get outside of your comfort zone? Like, do you think if you had a different producer, do you think you produce the same type of show who isn't an adrenaline junkie, or has that been had a pretty big influence on how crazy and courageous you've gotten?
Oh, for sure. Because there's definitely been times where I'm like, I can't do this. And she's like, we're filming it, so you're doing it. So that's helped a lot. But just in life, I always tell people too, like, you know, there's such an amazing feeling about breaking out of your comfort zone, because one, you realize you can do more than you thought you could.
Yes.
Two, it keeps you fully present in those moments of fear, because you can't be anxious. You can't be thinking about the past or the present, or the past or the future. So I always tell people, figure out what your comfort zone is. It doesn't have to be hiking or jumping out of an airplane. It could be going to dinner by yourself. So figure out what that comfort zone is, and then toe the line just a little bit, and you'll know quickly if you don't like it. But it's a really cool way to find other things you might.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Like, so I run ultra marathons, and
which is insane.
Yeah, it's you walked on a 5-foot ledge and a 1,000-foot drop. Like, it just we both have our own version of crazy. That's all that is. It's just a different. We're both eating at the crazy ice cream shop. We're just grabbing different flavors. That's all that is. And I do it for the same reason, right? I want to take myself to the maximum place of what I think I cannot do, and then show myself something different. Like, I want to prove myself wrong, right? You know, essentially, like, oh, I can't do that. Yeah, you can, right? Yeah. Like, how much is that transferred into the rest of your life? Like, so 5-foot ledge, 1,000-foot drop, like, that's a pretty big moment, right? And I know you've had others, but let's just stay on that illustration for a moment. Like, when you finish that, like, how has that impacted your ability to do other scary, fearful, concerning, overwhelming things? How has that transferred in the rest of your life?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely taught me that I'm capable way more than I thought I could. And it's the coolest thing I think about filming it, at least for me personally to watch back, is my reaction afterward. Because I know in those moments, every part of me is like, you can't do this. But then to watch the moment afterward where I'm just on camera like, this is why you do it. It's amazing. Like, I'm so fired up and just like the best high of life. And so coming back to those moments when I'm in the fear moments and being like, I know what this feels like afterward. I can do it. And that's in everything, you know, that's anything scary in life, right? Diving into a relationship or moving to a new city, whatever it is. It's like, look, one, I have the proof I've done it before. Yes. And two, I know the feeling and growth that comes from doing it. So that kind of gives me that push to try the next level. So
do you ever, like, when you're in that moment, you go, this one's going to go on my letter? Like, I know that this one's going to go down on my tool to help me in the next moment I feel not capable. Like, I know this is going to be one of those things that gets written down. Like, this one's I'm going to carry forward with me. Like, I had a moment, I'll give you, let me explain that maybe a little bit better. Like, I had a moment during my 50-mile run where I literally thought about quitting. Like, I thought, I was like, you know, I was at mile 34. I had 16 to go. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, you know, like, this is a lot. This is, you know, and then I remembered to myself, like, two truths, right? No one's going to know that I did, but I will. And I'm not giving up on me, right? Yeah. And secondly is, like, this is going to be one for me in the future that no one can ever take away from me. Like, I'm always going to be able to say, I achieved this, right? Yeah. So, Carrie, do you ever have a moment where you're standing there at the edge and the thing that drives you forward is to know that you're going to put another tool on that list that you're lettered to yourself, to know that when you're standing in that moment of adversity just on a regular Tuesday, that you can look back and go, I did this and nobody can take it from me? Does that influence courage in that moment for you? You know, it doesn't. Okay. Probably not the answer you expected. No, I mean, I'm curious. I'm so present in those moments that I'm not thinking of how I'm going to use it in the future. And then it's afterward when I have that feeling that I'm like,
yes, this is why I do these things. And then I draw back on those moments when I'm in maybe the next moment of thinking I can't do something, being like, no, I can, I have. But in that moment, no, I'm usually just like going back and forth between I'm terrified or I don't want to do this. And I know it's going to feel good afterward. So it's less about like, how is this going to impact me in the long run, or what lessons am I going to take from it? It's more just getting through that moment, but then drawing back on it later in life. So there's definitely, and I always tell people to try everything twice, because I always say the first time we have this preconceived notion, right? The first time I went whitewater rafting, I thought, I'm going to die. I'm going to hate this. And then I loved it. And so then, unfortunately, the second time was a little bit worse for me. That was definitely the scariest thing I've ever done. And that was like a try it twice and be like, okay, we're good. Tried it twice. You can check it off the list. But yeah, I always say give it at least one more go. I
agree. Like I say that I with food is a big one. You know, because often we're like, I don't like X, and it's like, well, gosh, like the person even cook it right? You know, did you know, you're assuming that chef knew what the heck they were doing to begin with, right? You know, was the ingredient in season and that kind of thing. But you know, I what I love is your honesty in that. Like, you know, running an ultra marathon takes a long time. Walking across that distance, right, doesn't. And I think one of the greatest gifts that you mentioned there that I would be remiss for not pointing out is all of these things are a version of meditation, that you have to be extraordinarily present in the moment, and which is the whole outcome objective of meditation itself is to build a process of becoming mindfully present. And so I think that's absolutely beautiful that you don't. One, that's probably why you're alive.
You know, I will say, actually, to your point, it's a little bit different with running, because I did run a marathon, and I do remember during that you have a lot more hours to think about what you're doing. Yes. So I do remember in that being like, this is one of those things that when I can say I've done it is going to make a difference in my life. It's a bit different when you're like whitewater rafting or skydiving. You don't really have time to be like, is this going to make a difference? You're like, I'm just going. But yeah, in running, it definitely, you have time to think about it.
Which is a gift for overthinkers, right? Is it trains your mind to less do that, right?
Exactly.
And to go, you know, good outcomes can happen when I don't overthink. You know, so, and I think for each person, we have our own challenges these own opportunities to grow. Whether that's you're an overthinker or you're somebody who under-indexes what you can accomplish. I've got a very good friend of mine since like kindergarten, and he read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, which
I'm reading that now.
Yeah, you there's some of the things you share, and I'm like, you're like a female, like much less vulgar version of David Goggins and some of the things you've done, right, or doing.
Thank you.
Different paths, right? But a lot of the tools and resources and things that you talk about, especially if you finished chapter 1 or the first section of that book and the letter and the thing that he talks about in that book. I won't spoil it for those who haven't read it. But some of the tools and ideas that you're sharing, there is have you finished it?
No, I'm on chapter 2. So now I'm like, ooh, now I'm really excited.
Yeah. As you read the book, you're going to go, I see where Kyle was coming from in that, I suspect. There's just a similarity in the way you approach things, the mindset, you know, certainly, not, you know, at least I don't think you were, you know, I don't believe there's been a female Navy SEAL. So, but, that I'm aware of, it's not a thing I'm super familiar with is, you know, who's been a Navy SEAL and who's not. Yeah. But one of the things I think is really interesting as you talk through your journey in this, I think it's so fascinating, so fascinating, is this blend between adventure and beauty and pushing yourself outside your comfort zone and tackling these things that are uniquely your opportunities for growth. Like, and that a lot of it is really, it's almost happenstance, right? That you didn't set forth to say, maybe you did, right? You haven't mentioned that. So did you, as you went through and said, okay, I'm going to get lost in beauty and I'm going to go see the world, I'm going to do all these things, was it through the purpose and through the filter of, I'm going to help Monica be a more courageous, less an overthinker? Or is that just really what's happened as a result of this adventure you've been on in life?
It's definitely been a result, because the goal was, honestly, I was trying to make it as a on-camera host in LA. So I thought, someone's going to see this and then hire me for the Travel Channel or something. So I had no idea how all of that works. But that was kind of what was in my head was, because I've been an entertainer for 20 years. I've been an MC and an on-camera host. And so that was the goal with it all along. I've just gotten to do all these epic things, and I've fallen more in love with myself and with my life just every time I go out and I do this. So that's just been an amazing side piece to all of it. But it also made me fall in love with the show and realize, I don't know if I would turn down a job if somebody called me, but I love what I'm creating. I love that it's inspiring people. So yeah, it's been a really fun process.
I was going to ask at this stage and phase of your journey, what would you do if they called? And I'm sure that would be your thought process would probably your decision-making process would probably look a little different today than it would have years ago.
To have somebody that can help me pay my bills, I'd probably take it. I will say entrepreneur life is not for the faint-hearted.
No, it's a whole different set of courageous skills. So, I want to talk about that book, The Power of Pivoting, How to Embrace Change and Create the Life You Love. Number one, the title is incredible. So can we see a copy? It looks beautiful.
Yeah,
there it is, The Power of Pivoting. Number one, that's just such a cool, I love that G, that arrow, that's gorgeous. And I think last year threw us all, like those, if you didn't have the ability to pivot, you probably didn't survive in 2020. Yeah. So very timely topic, very, very timely topic, as people recognize who made it through 2020, maybe a little exhausted, maybe a little beat up, and they're going, I don't know if I've got the power to pivot again, right? But I suspect this isn't just about business, not just about entrepreneurship. So share with me a little bit about the book, and if I'm picking up the book and I'm a reader and I come up to you and I'm like, Monica, like that was an incredible read. What really had an impact on me was this. Like, what do you hope the reader gets from reading your book, that if they fed it back to you in a review or that connection, they take you paddleboarding, right? That would really make you proud of the work that you created.
Yeah, I truly feel like my mission in all of this, the podcast, the show, the book, I want to show people that there's opportunity and change, and that you can shift your mindset from setbacks to setups. Because I feel like so often we get so focused on the loss when we're changing or pivoting, and there's so much opportunity. So you can have sadness and excitement at the same time. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson that I want people to take from it. But it's funny because even a year ago, I never planned on writing a book. It wasn't even on my radar. I think I always thought I would maybe share about, the process of my divorce and how that kind of shifted my mindset. But I thought, I can't write a book. I'm in the middle of the story. But then I thought, well, my middle might be somebody else's beginning. And I have been through some stuff, and let's just see. And I saw the world changing and everyone's scared and all of this fear and loss going on. And I thought, well, I've changed a lot. I've moved a lot. I've had a lot of careers. I've been through this relationship stuff. So I thought there's some lessons in this, and it doesn't have to be so terrifying. Yes, it can be scary, but if you can shift that mindset, and there's tools in it too that I want people to like work through and go, okay, how do I shift that mindset? What is next? What can I look forward to in these moments? I think it's life-changing. I think we're always changing and pivoting. And the sooner we can get comfortable with how to do that and how to navigate through that, the better off we'll be in the long haul, whether it's a global pandemic or just, little changes every day.
Yeah. Your kids graduating from kindergarten, that's an emotional moment for parents, or they're going into kindergarten, and, that's not a big change like a divorce, right? Or a big change like a move, but, life is just evolving constantly. And I want that on a t-shirt. Your setback is your setup.
Yeah.
I want that on
It's funny. I was doing a podcast interview actually, and the woman was talking about how she was so sad because her last child was about to go off to college.
Yes.
And it's that whole, like, if I'm not a mom, if I'm not working in an office, if I'm not an NFL player, who am I, right? These big questions of every single time we make those changes, who am I if I'm not the single fun girl, if I'm not a wife? So, but then somebody said to her, you can do whatever you want now, and you can go wherever you want. And so there's a way to be like sad of the loss, but also excited for the opportunity at the same time. And I think it's okay to mourn those things, but then there has to be a moment of, okay, what's next? And how can I look forward to this?
a, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the things that so often is, is, you know, if you didn't have the ability to pivot, you probably didn't survive in 2020. So we anchor our identity to the roles we play versus something deeper that's everlasting, right? And that's what's I suspect you may get into that as well. And I think one of the things that's so important that we remind ourselves is that at some point you were at the beginning of the thing that you're afraid to have end.
My favorite quote of all time that I actually start the book with, it's from the movie Hope Floats, and it's, beginnings are scary, endings are usually sad, but it's the middle that counts. Remember that when you find yourself at the beginning.
Oh, how true.
Yeah.
Oh, how true. Yeah, 100%. And I think if we can remind ourselves, right, like to be a rookie as often as possible with as many things, being okay being a rookie, right? And, you know, stay in that state of feeling okay being a rookie, putting yourselves like, you know, one of the things I think is really cool with you is you've got so many different things that you're constantly in this evolution and new beginnings and learning and adventurous. And so do you feel that as you've lived a life that way, right? Where you're putting yourself in these positions to be a rookie at that hike at Zion, or you've been a rookie and fill in the blank with your adventures. Do you think that constant state of being in that place of being a beginner helped you through some of these pivoting moments in your life?
Absolutely. I love my mess. I own my mess. And I think, you know, I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm a mess. I'm just figuring it out. That's why I like stumbling forward and, you know, all of this stuff. Right. And I think we all are. But so often we get stuck in this like comparison mode of comparing ourselves to other people or feeling like we should be in a certain place, which should and shouldn't are like the worst words. So I've learned to just kind of own it and have fun in the mess because I feel like I'm learning and growing. But yeah, I mean, would I like to have maybe some more stability? Probably. But I also like showing people what it's like to be a beginner in things. You know, I had somebody telling me to be a travel host, you have to be an expert in one area. And I said, but I'm an expert at not being an expert. I like to show people, you know, what it's like to have no clue and do it, because that's 99% of the people, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I kind of live my life just owning my mess.
Well, and I think that's so cool because the truth is, like I was talking to my wife about this, is I think about it from maybe a little bit different angle, right? Is that am I going to give a damn if anybody remembers me for this, right? So we have 3 kids. We're expecting number 4. You know, like it looks like Toys R Us exploded in our house sometimes, right? I don't know if Toys R Us exists anymore, but like it looks nuts sometimes where, you know, and it's late and we're looking at a sink full of dishes. And the question is, do we get a good night's rest, or do we make sure all those dishes are done in the sink? Do we get a good night's rest, or do we make sure all the toys are picked up if the kids didn't follow our instructions to put their stuff away? Do we get, you know, or do we have that moment of connection? Do I make a bowl of popcorn, or are we hustling and bustling around doing all these chores? And does anyone give a damn, right? And so I have the philosophy that I do not want to die and be remembered for the person with the most tidy house in the world. I don't care, right?
Yeah.
I just don't care. Now, if guests are coming over, people are coming over, I want things clean, right? And I'm not suggesting we live in filth, but my point is, like, it doesn't have to be perfect all the time, right? In
I think
so
that's
many ways.
Where there was a lot of blessing in my divorce, because everything blew up. And all of a sudden it was like, I can't care what other people think anymore because the plan went out the window anyway. And so I think that moment in my life kind of made me realize, one, nobody really cares about you as much as you think they are, because they're all caring about themselves.
Yes.
But 2, it doesn't matter if you have this plan or if things look perfect in your house, right? It's more who you are. Do I like who I am? Do I like where I'm going? Do I like what my life looks like? And if those things are on track, then the mess is just part of it and you can own it.
Yeah, which is the focus on the podcast, Stumbling Forward, right? Is, you know, moving forward one mess, one element at a time. And I think that's such a beautiful message. Specifically, you know, I want, you know, I'm blessed to be in relationship, you know, with what I do professionally outside of this podcast with a lot of women. And one of the things I think that I worry for my 2 little girls is this idea of perfectionism specifically for women. Like what allowed you, it sounds like that's something you've done a pretty strong or put a lot of effort into, is letting go of perfectionism. And for a creative, that's super hard to do. what allowed you to put down perfectionism? And, you know, with your podcast Doubling Forward, like what messaging and what value or what do you hope people who are struggling with perfectionism and not being okay with figuring out things one misstep at a time, what do you hope they get from hearing some of the stories of your guest in your show?
Yeah, I think with the show, our goal was, again, to show the process and the messy process throughout, you know, owning a business or just life in general. It is a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, but it's really, I saw so many podcasts, kind of like with the travel show. I saw so many people that were at the successful part, right? They talk about how they made their $1 million. And I thought, but what about those people that are just starting and it's messy and they're trying to learn how to use Instagram and they don't know how to set up a website, like the emotional breakdowns of working from home, you know, all these things that come with that. And so we kind of wanted to show that side of things. And personally, it was the same thing for me. I mean, I still struggle with body image and all of the things that women do, you know, especially being in the entertainment industry and
I couldn't imagine
being, you know, 20, 30 pounds overweight or whatever. But then I realized I keep getting hired as a mom, which is great. It pays pretty well. So I thought there's a market of relatability. And if I can show people what it looks like to be relatable, which is more people that can reach than those, you know, super, super fit, gorgeous people, that meant more to me, showing real and kind of breaking out of all the social media and the entertainment and the business stigmas of having things perfect and showing that it's okay to not know what you're doing. The most important thing is that you're moving forward or stumbling forward.
Yeah. And forgive me, but who the heck said that was perfect?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
I just like, I will take looking at my wife who has had 3 children and the impacts of 3 kids on her body, and knowing that her body tells the story of our life together. It's beautiful to me because she looks like she looks, which is gorgeous by any standard, but certainly by my standard for sure. But I will take that any day over some, you know, manufactured photograph from somebody who theoretically looks at some arbitrary standard of beauty. And I think one of the things that's heart-wrenching to me is you look at what beauty is globally and you look at what, I mean, it's such a different, like country to country, what is beauty? The standard is very different.
Yeah.
And so, you know, because where a woman's born, she's arbitrarily held to some beauty standard that has evolved over time and is geographically specific. Like, I would think that would be a definition of a bunch of horse patooey if you ask me. But
yeah, and I think once I realized, like, look, I'm never going to compete with these type of women that are going out for certain types of casting, right? But I'm really good in the lane that I'm in, and I really like who I am, where I am in life. And once I own that, like the best thing to me is when people say, oh my gosh, I watch your show and I feel like we're friends, or they've met me and they're like, you're just exactly the same. And I'm like, of course I am. I'm just me. Like,
yes.
I want it to be one of those things where I'm real, I'm relatable. You're going to hear the good and the bad and the ugly and everything in between. So, because that's who I like in other people as well. I want real people. So.
Yeah. Holy cow. Yes. Holy cow. Yes. And I think that's what a gift in that, is that I think so often people don't know who they are.
Yeah.
They don't know who their authentic self is. And I think one of the things, and tell me, like, I'm just curious your feedback on this. Do you think your authenticity, which you seem to have a really strong understanding who Monica is authentically, how has that served you through these pivots in your life of truly anchoring your identity to something more foundational and being comfortable in your own skin?
Yeah. I mean, it's really just been the last 4 or 5 years, you know, ever since all that stuff happened, that I went, okay, well, I'm going to own who I am and like it. But it wasn't always easy. And I am such an open book and loud person. And, you know, having people in my life, they're like, maybe you shouldn't share these stories that are so personal. And I'm like, but why? But the second I opened up and started really, truly owning who I am and started getting other people saying that they needed that message, that's when I went all in. And that's when I started going, okay, this means more than just me. Like, it's a bigger purpose. And so it's like, if I can help one other person get through their divorce or one other person who's struggling with depression, it's all worth it. I would rather go through that journey 1,000,000 times to do that than live some quote unquote perfect life that follows all the check marks.
Yeah. Yeah. Whoever put together the list really needs to go someplace away from me. Cause like, there's things I've gone through in my life and choices I've made where I don't, I look back and go, man, like in absence of that really messy moment, I wouldn't be who I am today. Yeah. And I wouldn't have gratitude for where I'm at today. I wouldn't have the perspective of where I'm at today. In the moment, I had this, like, not the attitude I'd recommend, which is, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
And now I recognized with enough of those moments that they were all happening for me. Exactly. That they were forming me. They were forming this person today who I can sit in a moment with such gratitude because I knew what it took me to get to this moment. And had I not gone through that, I know the lens of perspective of my life would look very, very different.
Yeah, and that's it, right? And I feel like so often, because we have this linear mindset, we think if we pivot in our career, if we change jobs, if we leave a relationship, if we leave a state, that we're taking a step backwards. But the truth is we're still moving forwards. We're always getting closer to the things that we're supposed to be doing and the people that are supposed to be in our lives. So none of them are steps backwards. If it wasn't supposed to happen, it wouldn't have happened. And so it's okay to check back in with yourself and ask, are these things I still want? I feel like so often we get stuck in the path that we're on and we don't take those moments. Businesses every quarter reevaluate and go, is this working? Is this not working? And we don't do that in our lives. And if we do, we beat ourselves up for it instead of going, okay, well, this didn't work, throw it out. This is working. Let's double down and see where it goes. So it's that having curiosity, right?
It is. I got to share a story that I think you'll relate to or potentially. So I shared before we started recording, I had surgery procedure on my foot. And when I was in college, I nearly left college to go to culinary school. So I love cooking. And to all the guys listening out there, if you want to find, like, if you're in the dating scene, learn to cook. It is a great skill set, right? Because the opposite gender, even the same gender, I suspect, but if you can cook well, people will hang out with you longer. It's just true. Just true, right? So it was a big identity. And like, I know a lot of chefs in the city I live in. I live in Indianapolis. So I've befriended a lot of them. I've gone to taking all kinds of, so it was part of my identity. Like, Kyle loves to cook. Kyle's a great cook. We'd host things. I do all this. We actually even had a blog before we started having a family called He Wears the Apron, which is kind of, isn't that clever, right? And my wife's a degree in journalism, and all this kind of stuff, right? It was a lot of fun, right? Well, then there was this understanding that that's me. That's me. Well, when your kids take what you've made and spit it out or throw it on the floor or tell you like, I literally have like, two of them are verbal, one of them's not verbal, but she has her own way of letting me know. Like, when you have 3 food critics sitting at your dining room table, like, all the time, it becomes a very different cooking process, to a place where I'm like, I feel bad. I'm like, I don't care what you think about the food, just eat it, which is really not the dad I want to be. And so when I got hurt, I hired a chef. I hired a plant-based vegan chef, which I'm vegan and try to, I'm veganish, right? So I'm close enough to being vegan that I'm not annoying. That's the goal, right? Is that, right? So we're minute 52 into this conversation. If I was purely vegan, it would have been the first thing I mentioned. So it's the rule. It's the rule. So as long as I'm not that guy. But I hired this. I outsourced this thing that used to be part of my identity, right? And what's been the amazing process is how freeing that is I can say that's no longer me. And I don't have to be overshadowed by this thing that everyone thought I was, but really had lost the passion for. And so I'm curious to your thoughts as you've stepped away from things, if you let go of things that weren't serving you anymore, have you had that same emotional response where it's almost this like exhale, like, okay, I don't have to be weighed down with this thing that was my identity, but I've outgrown it, or the environment in my life, the circumstances that is no longer serving me. Like, talk to me about the emotional feeling that you've had. I'm curious if it's similar to what I've had with cooking for my family.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like I said, I've been in the entertainment industry, but I bounced around. So I lived in Nashville and wanted to sing and write country music. And then I realized I don't like singing my own songs. It's too vulnerable. I don't like it. I write those for me. Like, I just had no desire to. And then I actually had a crazy circumstance. Basically, the agent I was messaging in LA, I met her in the bathroom in Nashville, and she gave me her card and was like, here's my card. And I was like, wait, I know you. And that ended up actually making us switch places and took me to LA, which I never planned. But then I would find myself on sets and I'd be thinking, I wonder if I'll be home in time for The Bachelor, or be home in time for dinner. And I thought, this doesn't light me up the way I thought it would. And in LA, everybody wants to be on set. And I was really fortunate to get to do it. And, you know, it's really good money. But I just wasn't fired up by it. And I thought, this isn't who I want to be. And letting that go was difficult. And everyone's like, but you're doing it in LA. But I had no desire to. And that's why, you know, the second Steve said, you want to leave? I was like, yeah, let's go. But there was that moment of, am I letting go of this person who I've been for 20 some years pursuing an entertainment career? Am I letting that go now just to go be with this guy in the mountains? And the funny thing is, I've still been able to do some acting and things like that out here. There's more opportunity, which I think is the funny thing too. When you let go of what you think things should look like, or you think the path you're supposed to be on, they come to you in a way that feels way better than when you're trying to force something that isn't for you anymore. So there was a relief in letting that entertainment part go and say, oh, if I get it, I'll have fun on set and it's not a big deal, but I'm no longer pursuing this 24/7. And let me work on the things that actually light me up.
That. Man, oh man. Like, I think so often people wonder, like, how do you know this is for me? Right? How do you know? And I think you just really spoke some powerful, powerful wisdom, which is understanding chasing versus allowing. Right?
Yeah.
And if you step back and allow, and it's not coming to you, then that may not be for you. That's a potential sign to say, you know, listen to your gut, get tuned in, spend time in prayer, meditation, reading, however you get connected. But that is one of the signs that suggest, and that feel like if you're in something and you're focused on something else, you may not be living in authenticity, right? Like if you're,
well, and that's how, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to say, that's how I figured out for me, it was hosting. So I was actually reading the book, You're a Badass by Jen Sincero. And it was, when are you your best self? When do you lose time and you're not thinking about anything else? You know, when are you happiest? All this stuff. And for me, over 20 years of trying to be a singer and actress, I kept getting hired as a host. I just kept getting these MC jobs and different things. And when I went through that, I went, oh my gosh, it's when I'm on stage. It's when I'm hosting or singing in a cover band, or like, but there's something about a live audience and hosting. That is when I am my absolute best. That's when I know I'm giving back 100% of who I should be. And that's what kind of switched things in my mind. But I get a lot of questions of people, you know, especially since the book has come out, being like, when do I know I should pivot, right? When do I know I should move or leave this job or leave this relationship? And I always say, I think it's somewhere between I'm not ready because I'll have regrets, and my gut is screaming at me and it's coming out physically. Because if you stay too long in something, you will know. You will start road raging or crying randomly. Like your body will react in other ways that are saying something is not right. I'm not lined up how I should be.
Yes,
and that's when you got to check in.
Yes. And we need less road rage. We need a lot less road rage.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially as I think about my kids growing up and driving. We need less road rage. So here's what I think is interesting for you. I'm going to pivot a little bit in this conversation because I've got a few more questions I want to ask you before I run you out of time here. So thank you so much for your graciousness, your time. It's been a fun conversation. So one of the things I think is really interesting is you use fear as a tool. Most people are like avoid fear, right? But you embrace it and use it as a tool to move forward. So what have you learned about fear that I think that you can share with others is how to use fear as a way to live and fuel yourself forward?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up afraid of everything, absolutely everything. And so I switched it into this, I'm going to plan everything. I'm going to make sure that nothing ever goes wrong because I'm going to be so stuck to it. And all that did was cause a lot of anxiety. And as we know, things don't go the way we plan anyway. So, you know, I had to quickly readjust that thinking because things kept not going according to plan. And so I realized the second you can embrace fear and lean into it, you figure out, should I be going this way or should I be going this way? You know, am I strong enough to handle this? Of course I am. You know, you get to these different moments of figuring out your life by facing your fear. And I always say, I don't overcome my fear at all. I'm not any less afraid of heights. I just know it's not going to hold me back if there's something I want to do that involves heights or whatever it is for you. So it's not necessarily about beating fear. It's just learning it's not going to hold you back. And then you realize that, again, in those moments, you can be present and there's a lot of lessons. And it's the biggest life high in the world when you face a fear and come through it.
I couldn't say that better. That's incredible. It's incredible. I hope that if people get anything from out of this episode, those who are listening, that is that you don't beat fear. You don't. In fact, would you agree that fear is a key ingredient for your moments of, I don't want to use joy is the descriptor, but the moments where you look back and you're the most proud of, those moments that you reflect on with the most gratitude? Was fear a key ingredient in that for you?
Absolutely. Because whether it was something I was purposely out to do, like a hike or an outdoor adventure, or it's fear because change has happened, right? You've lost a job, you've lost a loved one, whatever it is. The next moment comes with fear. But once you get through that, you're on to all the good stuff, right?
Yes.
So fear is always going to be a part of it. So it's not letting those moments be walls. It's just moving forward. Love it.
Love it. Love it. All right. So I don't know if anyone's ever asked this to you. So this is the one I'm kind of, I'm curious, like the adventurous Monica, the pivoting Monica, the author, podcast, MC, you have lived a life of adventure. You really have. So what is the adventure that you're still afraid of that you haven't taken on yet?
Ooh, how deep do we want to go?
Hey, I mean, it's your moment. We can go as deep as you like.
Yeah, there's definitely travel adventures that are big for me, but I think the biggest one for me is getting remarried, which is not, there's no ring or anything, but that's the plan. Getting remarried and having kids, which I think there's a lot of fear in not knowing if that's even part of it for me anymore. Just, timeline and being a lady and all that stuff.
Yes.
But I've also learned to let that go. I think about a year ago, I finally had that talk with my parents of like, look, this may not be in the cards for me. And I kind of learned to lean into that and go, if it's not, okay, how can I be a mom in a different way? And part of that was writing the book. How can I inspire in a different way? How would I be happy at the end of my life if this is something that doesn't happen for me? If I can inspire a lot of people and speak on stages and like change lives, I'm okay with that. So once I kind of accepted that, it took a little bit out. But yeah, I'm sure in those moments, if or when they do happen, that'll be the scariest thing, is jumping back into the relationship parts.
I didn't see you going there. That's
right. I was like, how did you?
I didn't know. No, I thank you for that.
And scuba diving.
No, it's yeah. I mean, I appreciate you not staying surface. I wanted to ask that to allow you to go where you wanted to go, and I think you just did something for a lot of women and a lot of couples who, just because you're married doesn't mean the kids come naturally for you. Yeah. And we don't talk about infidelity. I mean, infertility. Please, Kara, clean that.
Right.
I've had some fumbles, but we don't talk about the fact that having kids, regardless whether that's in a relationship or whatever, may not show up for people for whatever reason. And so thank you for sharing, the conversation with yourself, but I imagine that conversation with your mom and dad was one that was a real exhale but challenging moment.
Yeah, and I think just like everything else, you have to don't. And once you release the things you don't have control over, it is a sigh of relief. I know that if it ever comes to a point, let's say I'm 70 and I'm like, no, I have to be a mom. There are ways, there are adoption. So once I kind of opened that up to myself of, look, if this is something that is on my heart every day for the rest of my life, I'll find a way. But I don't have control over the timeline or how things are going to happen. So letting go of that control, whether it's in your job, in your relationships, that kind of helps you just lean back and have fun with life and go, well, let's just see.
What a gift. What a gift. Well, Monica, I've got one last question for you, but before I ask that, I just want to recognize you for something. I think one of the things I didn't expect this to come from our conversation, but one of the things I've learned in my life is the power of surrendering. I call myself a recovering control freak. It's not easy. to be okay and recognize that control is an illusion. And I think that's such a powerful thing to share with others. You know, you go too far down that path, and that's where addiction and all kinds of issues often show up. And so thank you so much. That was one of the many, many wonderful pieces of wisdom that you shared with us. So thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your wisdom. Got one last question for you, and then we'll let you go. What does legacy on purpose mean to you, Monica?
To me, it means so much bigger than myself. It means leaving behind lessons that can help other people. I feel like my purpose in this world is to help people embrace change and learn to break out of their comfort zone. So if after I'm gone, people still have those lessons and those tools and things that maybe I've shared, then I've done my job here on earth.
I love that. I love that. And I must admit, as I think about Zion National Park and I think about your walk and what you've done, I would say you have already achieved that in the time you've been here already. So thank you for that. Monica, truly a blessing to have you here. Again, you can share with our audience again one last time in case they didn't catch it in our conversation. How can we follow you? How can we support you? Where can we find the book? Provide that one last time before we let people go.
Yeah, of course. So everything is on my website, monicagoes.com. That has the book, the podcast, the show. The book is also available on Amazon, so you can grab it there, Kindle or paperback version. And then on social media, I'm at Monica Goes Show.
That's awesome. Awesome. We'll link to all that in the show notes for everyone's ease. Monica, thank you so much for being with us today. And I certainly hope this is a opportunity for us, you and I, to stay in conversation.
I would love that. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for being part of us.